Luxury used to be loud. Think gold trim, fancy marble floors, oversized logos on sweaters or bags that made sure everyone in the room understood exactly who had arrived. Today, the most expensive things are often the quietest. Homes that look almost empty, neutral tones like the millennial beige ones, and understated tailoring. So I guess somewhere along the way, luxury kind of changed. And it didn't just change aesthetically, it changed psychologically as well. Because of course, luxury has never been about objects only. It has always been about what those objects promise, which feelings we connect to certain objects, and what we expect from luxury now says a lot about who we've become. As Coco Chanel once said, luxury must be comfortable, otherwise it's not luxury. At first, that statement sounds kind of simple, but it hides something fundamental. Luxury is never just material, it is emotional, and emotions evolve. So let's take a look at luxury and what it means and what it meant in the good old days and how it all changed. Historically, luxury had a simple function. It made hierarchy visible. In pre-industrial societies, access to rare materials, craftsmanship, or land was limited to a small elite. So, luxury signaled power because it was genuinely scarce. When Thorsten Veblen wrote The Theory of the Leisure Class in 1899, he described how wealthy individuals used visible expenditure to demonstrate status. The purpose was not comfort, but rather recognition. That means luxury had to be seen to fulfill its purpose and to be meaningful. A carriage, a tailored coat, or even fine silverware engraved with initials, all of these things were not private pleasures, they were public declarations of wealth. They stabilized social ranking and told others where you stood, and emphasized the difference between groups, the fancy people and the simple ones, if you will. Veblen wrote that conspicuous consumption of valuable goods is a means of reputability to the gentleman of leisure. To put it simple, luxury wasn't indulgence, it was proof. But modernity disrupted that stability, and today our connection to the term luxury changed. Mass production made beauty scalable, and digital media made lifestyles globally visible. Suddenly, the symbols of wealth could be reproduced, and luxury items were no longer as scarce as they once were. Visibility stopped being reliable, and so luxury evolved. While the philosophy of minimalism seeks to strip away the unnecessary to find a pure essence, the early 2000s offered a loud, plush, and hyper-visible antithesis. This was the undisputed era of the so-called logomania, a period where status wasn't whispered in the quality of a stitch, it was screamed in rhinestones across the seat of a velour tracksuit. The French sociologist Jean Baudrillard argued that in consumer society, we do not consume objects for their utility, but for their so-called sign. So take Juicy Couture for example. In the early 2000s, its velour tracksuits, loud logos and all, I think we all know how they looked, were an unmistakable emblem of celebrity status. They were worn by stars like Paris Hilton and Britney Spears and became shorthand for a certain era of aspirational luxury. But as the look was mass-produced and copied endlessly after a while, its signal faded. So what once marked an insider suddenly became the uniform of the ordinary. During this time, those brands weren't just selling apparel, they were really selling highly legible social hierarchies, and that's what made them so interesting. In the world of logomania, the brand name serves as a democratic shortcut to perceived wealth. It removed the need for a trained eye because you didn't need to understand textile density or, I don't know, like the special tailoring to grasp the value of a garment. You simply needed to be able to read the logo. It was fashion as a billboard, an immediate, unmistakable signal of belonging and purchasing power that anyone on the street could decode at a glance. However, the pendulum eventually swung. In stark contrast to the neon branding and velvet textures of the Y2K era, we've seen the rise of quiet luxury. When we look at fancy fashion brands today, we see a shift from outward projection to internal validation. But we shouldn't mistake this newfound subtlety for humility. In reality, quiet luxury functions as a highly sophisticated, so-called in-group signal. By removing the visible logo, the barrier to entry actually becomes significantly higher. It creates what we might call a literacy of quality. To identify a $3,000 cashmere sweater, for example, that lacks a single tag or emblem, you must already know what high-tier quality looks like. This creates a form of exclusivity through exclusion. If logomania is a shout to the masses, quiet luxury is a subtle nod to a peer that already exists. One could argue it is actually more elitist because it requires a specific cultural education to decode. It relies entirely on the if you know factor. This creates a metaphorical secret handshake for the ultra-wealthy, ensuring that they are recognized instantly by their equals while remaining entirely invisible to the uninitiated, and that's the big difference. Ultimately, we have to realize that both movements are equally obsessed with status. The difference lies only in the execution. One uses the logo as a shield to prove worth, while the other uses the absence of it as a gate to keep others out. And so you could say logomania is about being seen by everyone and quiet luxury is about being recognized by the right people. But even here, like I said, the premise remains the same, that ownership will stabilize identity. And this is where the brain quietly intervenes. We often believe that luxury can transform us, that a new purchase will somehow change who we are or make us feel better in a way. We imagine that acquiring the perfect apartment in our favorite part of the city, or expensive trinkets or nice shoes will elevate our lives in a permanent way. But human psychology doesn't work like that. Harvard psychologist Daniel Gilbert has shown that we are consistently bad at predicting how long pleasure from these acquisitions will last. We overestimate their impact. We think that the rush of a new car, for example, or a refined home, will reset our happiness for good. Yet within weeks or months at best, the excitement fades. This is normal biology, not failure. The brain simply adapts to those once new and exciting things, and it normalizes what once felt extraordinary. Psychologists call this hedonic adaptation. What initially seemed exceptional gradually becomes ordinary. The object remains, but the thrill does not. So the object is neutralized in the mind, no matter how exquisite or rare it might be, and this will happen every time. But there are different forms of luxury, not just items. Research by Thomas Gilovich offers a fascinating contrast to what we've just learned. When people invest in experiences rather than possessions, for example, learning a skill they always wanted to learn, or traveling somewhere new, or even sharing meaningful moments with others, the satisfaction lasts longer. That's because experiences integrate into memory and identity. They become part of the story we tell ourselves about who we are. So a painting or a novel even, or a trip abroad, these reshape our perception of life. Objects, no matter how refined, usually do not. This highlights a subtle but profound truth. If luxury is built primarily around objects, it will always struggle against the mind's natural tendency to adapt. The marble or the silk, no matter how carefully curated and expensive, cannot permanently elevate the inner experience. So the deeper question becomes kind of clear. If material refinement alone cannot sustain fulfillment, what forms of luxury can truly nourish us? And that question leads us to a new kind of luxury, one you can't put on display, one that exists inside you, but that feels just as real, if not more so. In the past, luxury was loud. It was the roar of a V12 engine, the oversized logo on a leather bag, or the thick smoke of an expensive Cuban cigar. But in 2026, the flex has changed. It's no longer about what you own. It's more about how well your biology functions. We have entered the so-called era of invisible luxury, so let's take a look at that. Today, the ultimate status symbol isn't parked in your garage. It's tracked on your wrist. We are witnessing the rise of the so-called wellness industrial complex, a trillion-dollar shift where health is no longer a personal choice, but a high-end commodity. In this world, luxury is defined by optimization. It's the $5,000 smart mattress that adjusts to your REM cycles, the personalized AI sleep coach whispering in your ear, or whatever else. The social hierarchy has been recalibrated. As the saying goes, health is the new wealth. A decade ago, you showed off your hustle by how little you slept and how much you worked. And now you show off your discipline by how well you recover. In the high-stakes circus of 2026, a resting heart rate of 45 is low-key a bigger status symbol than a sports car ever was. Why? Because you can't lease a low cortisol level. You can't fake cellular longevity. Invisible luxury is the ultimate quiet luxury. It's the glow of someone whose every nutrient, breath and heartbeat is engineered for peak performance. So the cigar is out, but the biometric breakthrough is in. So the emphasis increasingly shifts toward what cannot be easily displayed as well, which leads to other forms of new luxury. For example, time autonomy. Time autonomy means your schedule is not dictated by survival. You can choose when to work, when to rest, or when to disengage. In an economy built on urgency and control over time, this is extraordinary. Freedom from constant urgency. This means your nervous system is not permanently activated. Chronic stress is normalized in modern society, so to live without it is rare. Access to elite education. Access to elite education is not about diplomas alone. It's access to networks, knowledge, and intellectual leverage that compounds over decades. Preventive health care represents something subtle, the ability to invest in long-term internal stability rather than reacting to crisis. Therapy as well, and privacy, because privacy may be the most modern form of luxury. In a culture built on exposure, the ability to remain unobserved is power. But why is this luxury for us? Because luxury at its core means freedom from constraint. The Harvard study of adult development reinforces this shift. Over 75 years of data revealed that strong relationships predict life satisfaction and health more reliably than wealth or even fame. So emotional regulation and social connection outperform material accumulation in the long run, which suggests something profound. Once basic material needs are met, the definition of luxury shifts from acquisition to environment, and from external validation to internal regulation. At its deepest level, luxury has always been about safety. In earlier centuries, gold meant survival. In industrial society, wealth meant insulation from economic collapse. Today, though, physical survival is less immediate for many, but psychological instability has intensified. Existential therapist Irvin Yalom argued that much of human striving is an attempt to buffer against mortality and insignificance. But refinement cannot dissolve existential anxiety. Studies by Robert Emmons on gratitude show that deliberately shifting attention towards appreciation increases well-being significantly over time. What changes is not the external environment, but the internal orientation toward it. And this may be the final transformation of luxury. So when we take a look at this quote again from today's perspective, we could say that luxury must be comfortable, but today, comfort is no longer physical, it's mental. Luxury began as a spectacle. It stabilized hierarchy and made power visible. It evolved into branding and symbolic identity, but now it is becoming increasingly internal. What used to answer the question, how do others see me, now increasingly answers, how do I experience my own life? And that shift may be the most radical luxury of all. Not huge logos, but a life that feels internally coherent, even when no one is watching.